Welcome to Awakening Radio here on Nighthawk Radio. To listen to Nighthawk Radio, go to nighthawk-radio.com. Check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Rumble, YouTube Music, Facebook, everywhere you find good podcasts. Tracy and Joe are on assignment. They are in Germany right now. We're blessed enough to have co-host Stan Howard and Joe Flippo. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good. How are
Hey,
you
good.
doing tonight?
Appreciate you guys taking the time out of your schedule to be on, man, and
Oh, no
co-hosting
problem.
Awakening Radio.
Well, I can get in trouble with the best of them. So as long as we're unsupervised, this may be entertaining.
Hey, we allow anything on the station, man.
Okay.
We are definitely for free speech. We're for free speech for sure. So,
Hey, I'm off the bat.
absolutely, man. So I'll let you guys get going.
Hey, how long you been doing this, Joe?
I have been hunting Sasquatch since August 5th, 2004. I had to think about it,
Okay.
the year. Yeah. I,
Uh,
I never thought they were real. I went all through the ghost investigations and haunting places and stuff, and that was a thrill for me. Uh, but on the side, I was also an avid hunter. I still am. Uh, I come from a family that was a subsistence hunting and gathering family. Uh, Fishing, hunting. My dad didn't have a good uh, education as far as book sense, but he was a ghost in the woods. He knew when and where to get what and how many we were going to get. And I learned that just by proxy going with him. I was his youngest son, so I was like his shadow, and he made sure I knew what he knew, or he taught me everything I knew. I'm sure he didn't teach me everything, but he taught me what I know. And
oh, I do. Yeah.
so I was a security guard in Texas, and you can find my stuff on different podcasts and stuff. But I was a security guard in Texas between the time when Hurricane Katrina had just
Mm.
passed and Hurricane Rita was about to hit the southeast coast down there. And basically, I saw one down on the Neches River in Texas, and I didn't even think Bigfoot. Uh, I thought a gorilla or some kind of hybrid that was in some kind of enclosure or zoo had got out, and so it wasn't until I talked with my grandma, and she's like, "Oh, you saw a booger." And that's
Mm.
what we call Sasquatch down here in northwest Alabama, south central Tennessee.
Mhm.
And so from then on, I realized, look, if those things are in the woods, I don't know nothing about them. And if I'm elbow deep in a gut pile and one comes up, am I in trouble? I don't know. At that time, is they going to try to take my deer, my hog, or whatever I've got? I didn't know that either. And so those ideas kept rolling around in my head to the point where I had to find out. And to me, that's no different than if I had moved into bear country and come up on a bear, and
Mhm.
I was hunting there. I would have used that same method to find out about bears so that I could coexist
Yeah.
and survive the encounters. And that was my encouragement on finding them. And at the time, I didn't even think anybody else cared about Sasquatch. Nobody. This is the early 2000s. Nobody's going to believe what I saw. And
Mhm.
so I went and I found BFRO, and they're really good at taking reports, but I'm not sure about their investigating uh, abilities. I called and I did a report, and I had a guy from California call me, and we talked for about 2 hours. And he's like, "Yep, seems like you've seen a squatch." I was like, "A what?" And he said, Sasquatch. I said, oh, okay. I didn't even know what a Sasquatch was at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started for 10 years. I was in the woods as much as I could be. There were some times I would spend a week in the woods, and it just went from there.
You know, the Salish people actually come up with the name Sasquatch. They call it Squatchet, is what their name. They later on become Sasquatch throughout the Northwest Indians and the Nut people and all
Right.
that stuff and everything in Alaska. And of course, the Nut people actually were thought that they were actually kin to some of the Japanese, and the Japanese come from the Chinese, and the Chinese called them the
Yeah.
Urine. And then later on, archaeologists found the Gigantopithecus blackie. So they know that they've got jawbones of these things. They know these things
Right.
exist. And my question always through when it comes to Bigfoot, Sasquatch, uh, Sulcalo, whatever you want to call them. They've had just many different names. Urine, just of course, America called them Bigfoot. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Since one found in oil rigs and stuff around oil areas. But my thing is when they migrated over with the American Indians. Of course, they migrated over thousands of years ago when the Bering Strait was frozen, and all back and through Americas, and they kind of spread out into our area and down in the south into what area you're talking about. They seem like they got more aggressive. They call them the three-toed monsters, and they're very more aggressive. They're more ape-like because they inbred. I mean, I've heard a lot of
I,
Bigfoot type creatures from your area, extremely aggressive, especially up against like dogs, animals, people's livestock.
Down here, they act more like a chimpanzee than a gorilla, if that makes sense.
And I've heard that
Um,
too. I heard like Billy Ape. Have you ever heard of the word Billy Ape?
right, a billy ape,
Yep.
right, would be a closer description actually to what they look like. But I personally don't think they came across the land bridge. I personally think they was already here before the continents all divided out, and they just happened to be here. And you can talk about all the different descriptions and stuff, but I think that the word Sasquatch or Bigfoot is a cover word that's a synonym for ape. If you
Oh,
say ape, you
yeah.
could mean a human, you could mean a billy ape, you could mean an orangutan, you could mean a chimpanzee, a gorilla, but they're all apes, but they're not the same thing.
It's a North American
And
ape, pretty much. That's what my thoughts are. It's a
right,
North American ape. Yeah.
and people say, well, there's this type, that type, whatever. But I think they're talking about different things. And some of them that look more human may be a relic hominid. I'm not opposed to that idea. But there's some that I've seen that there's nothing human about them. That
Hmm.
first one I seen, nothing screamed human about it. It looked like the mix between an orangutan and a gorilla.
Yeah.
Um, and I would have never thought that that was human on any level. Uh, but there's some that people say they see that looks like humans, and I believe in mountain giants. Like and in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, but when Ron Moorhead got those Sierra sounds, I don't think that was Sasquatch sounds. I think that was mountain giants hollering at him, and
Yeah.
and that's a little bit different story than Sasquatch, but uh, everybody puts all of that into one category, saying the word Bigfoot. And
Hmm.
that's why I think the word Bigfoot is a catch-all term like ape.
Yeah. And I think you're exactly right. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there's many different types of these creatures out there. It's I believe, with the Yetis, I believe it's a different type of gorilla type, ape type creature. I believe the
Mm-hmm.
Urine is a different creature. They're different sizes
Yeah.
too. Some are like 4 foot
Yeah.
tall, 5 foot tall, 8 foot,
Right.
12 foot. I mean, you got the red-headed giants from the Indians from here in Kentucky area. They're talking about the giants in the trees. There's another set of Indians
Right.
and Navajos, and I mean, there's so many different types out there.
Right.
I mean, I'll tell you a little story just real quick. My dad, when I was a kid, when I was 9 years old, was going to go buy some land in LaRue County, Kentucky. All right. And the guy said he had about 305 acres of land down there. Now, the guy was in his 90s. And the reason why my dad asked me was, why are you selling all this land? His son was in his middle 60s and he was in bad health. All right. His daddy was 90, like 91, 92, and was in better health than
Right.
his son. He had to go to California. He was going to sell his land. So he was going to sell my dad a chunk, about 20 acres of land down there in LaRue County. And my dad asked him and said, well, what's all back there on that property? And the guy goes, well, I was about your son's age. Now I was 9 years old and he's in his 90s. Okay. Because I was your
Mhm.
son's age last I was back there, but there's like a little pond back there that my grandfather took me to. There's land in Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina. There's land here that people ain't been probably in 100 years. There's no
Right.
telling what's out there. I mean,
Right.
and this is modern day society.
Yeah. I have actually talked with an officer from the Department of the Interior, and I've got a friend of mine who's a biologist for the Army Corps of Engineers in Mississippi, and he actually put me in contact with this guy from the Department of Interior, and they know they're there. The guy, uh, we had probably a 4 hour conversation, me and this guy from the Department of the Interior, and he told me that his working hypothesis was at the time that before Native Americans came over to the New World, as they call it, there was probably as many, if not more, non-human primates as there are in Africa now, but
Yeah.
they brought diseases. He said,
Mhm.
and they recovered from those diseases. But then when the white Europeans came over, they brought more diseases that they couldn't recover from. So though their working hypothesis was that these sightings that you've seen every now and then was a relic population of breeding populations that were separated out. Nobody saw them. Well,
Mhm.
it's been 500 years since the Europeans came over here. And it takes about 500 years for animals to adapt to different diseases. So now
Mhm.
that they're adapting, they're not just surviving on survival mode, hand to mouth, but they're actually thriving. And that was his hypothesis on why we see more now. Is not because it's not necessarily because we're getting farther in the woods, but they're coming closer to the civilization because they're able to. And he was telling me that uh, because they didn't know about microbiology, they just know if you walked across the path of a white man, uh, he might have cholera or just something as simple as influenza for us. They walk through, they breathe it in uh, those germs. They take it to back to their family unit, and the whole family unit is wiped out.
Oh yeah.
Same
Yeah.
way with cholera or dysentery or or even Spanish flu, And
Yeah.
so his thinking was they stay separated from us because they don't know if just breathing around us is safe.
Yeah.
And with them staying away from us, that would be why whenever you see them, most of the time they're going away from you. Even down here, I've lived on two properties that's had them. I've had them interact with my kids. I've had them interact with me. Uh, I've actually when Finding Bigfoot came out, my two boys were both 10-year-old at the time, and my oldest one said, Daddy, you see these all the time. I said, yeah, I'll take you out in the backyard, show you to them. He's like, yeah, but I want to see a big one. I said, I want to see one. I said, well, if we go Bigfoot hunting, you'll see one. I said, I'm not like a TV show that just says they're there. I'll
Mhm.
show you. And so I took him to a wildlife preserve down here in Lauderdale County, and this is 10 in the morning. And to make a long story short, we were there less than 30 minutes, and one jumped out of a tree less than 30 feet from us, landed flat-footed on the ground. He jumped probably 60 feet out of a tree and hit every limb coming down just like a gorilla does. Landed flat-footed, looked at us, hollered, and ran off. And that one was only about 7 feet tall. He was probably a juvenile, and
Okay.
we had heard hollering. We had heard hollering before then, and I turned around to ask him, did he see that? And he was already hot footing it back to the truck. And we was about 200 yards from the truck, and my younger son was standing behind me, and he's like, Daddy, are we okay? I was like, yeah. I said, he's going back to tell his daddy that we here, so we're gonna get to the truck before his daddy gets here. And so when we got back to the truck, my older boy was sitting in there. He was like, Daddy, I thought you was just gonna say we was going Bigfoot hunting, so you would have us enjoying a hike in the woods. He said, I've had all the Bigfoot hunting I want. And from then until he was about 17-year old, he would not go outside at night. When the sun was going down, he was in the house. And we lived in a property at that time. We had a older juvenile that would come up and slap on the house right there by where he was. His bed was up against the wall, and it would slap on the house so hard it would bend their siding up on the house, and I'd have to replace the siding. But
Wow.
I used to have uh, fireside chats and stuff, and I've had people record stuff for internet and things, and we'd be sitting around our bonfire at night, and you'd hear them coming up and hollering at us and stuff. Oh, and that was a regular thing. It got to be so regular that the boys like, oh, Daddy's one of them boogers hollering again outside, and so. Uh, we had a lot of experiences with them. That house that they slapped on when we moved in there hadn't been lived in for about 3 years, and that when we were moving in that night, there was that juvenile stood at the fence, which was about 20 feet from the house, and screamed at us in the plain sight right there. He was not happy. Well, come to find out, the front porch was about 5 feet off of the ground, and he had been crawling up in there and sleeping in the high side of the house
Mhm.
underneath the porch. So he had to leave because we moved in that house, and he wasn't happy. But he would come
Mm.
back. He would come back pretty regular, and I'd leave him my gut piles and stuff, and a bucket, and when I'd come in, when it got dark, I set my bucket down there by the edge of the house. And the next day, it'd always be about 30, 40 yards up the road on the side of the road from the house. And you could see his handprint where he reached in there and pulled the guts out. And you could see where his fingers streaked the blood on the side of the bucket where he reached in there and got it. Looked like a big
Mhm.
old hand. Uh, I would I would put out sweet feed for deer, and they would come up there and grab that sweet feed and eat it. And I got pictures of their handprint, and it's twice the size of mine. Where one had went in there and grabbed it like that right there, and was eating the sweet feed.
So they're how tall do they get down that way?
Uh, a good adult male that's in his prime will down here will be about 6.5, 7 foot tall. Uh, if he's not big at all. Some of them are short and stocky. Uh,
Mhm.
Now, in Northwest Alabama here, where that first property I was on, there was one. His there been 11 feet tall,
Oh,
and
wow.
he couldn't have put his head in a 5-gallon bucket if you'd wanted to, because his head was so big, a 5-gallon bucket wouldn't have went down on it. They would come and eat our blackberries once once the blackberries got ripe. In my first property, I had 6 acres of blackberries behind my house, and there was just trails where you could walk down through there. Everything else was thick bushes, so it had been logged a few years before I rented that property, and the blackberry that growed up there. And you would hear chip widow's wheel calls, and those birds ain't around here anymore. We have whippoorwills here. A chip widow's wheel is related to a whippoorwill, but they're not here no more. But you would still hear that chip widow's wheel sound, and I'd sat back at a bonfire behind that house was about 40 feet from my back porch, and you could hear the chip widow's wheel. One would start, and then 180 degrees from it, another one would, and you would get 8 or 9 whistling at you, and you could hear them coming from a distance and getting close. And when that many got too close to my comfort, I would grab my drink cup like I was going in the house and get me another drink, and I would stay inside the rest of the night. But they would come around. My youngest son, one night we heard the chip widow's wheel hollering, and this was in 2016, I think. I've got YouTube videos of our conversation after it happened on there. But he's like, "Daddy, I want to see one of those birds." I said, "Well, come on, I'll go show you one of those birds if it's a bird." And so we walked down, and I kept the grass cut. We had a definite border there where about 180 feet past my back porch door, I quit cutting the grass, and we was on 12 acres. And there was a weeping willow tree and a fir tree that were growing, I guess, 8 feet apart. Well, those Sasquatch would come up and watch my fire, and they built a nest between those two trees. And there would be nights when all you would see was their eye shine off that fire with them sitting there watching. There might be 2, might be 3, might be 1, might be 8. But they would sit around that tree and they'd watch, and you could see where the ground was packed, the high grass was packed down, where they'd lay there and watch. And so I told him, I said, "Well, let's go look and see." Well, we went down and cut up one of the trails about 40 yards from our house, and one whistled and stood up, and it was about 6.5 feet tall. I'm 5'10", so it was about 4 inches taller than me. It was a adolescent. You can tell because they're gangly when they're adolescents. They're it's just like looking at a adolescent human compared to an adult human. You can tell. So he stood up and he looked at me, and he dropped his head. He looked up and he seen I was still looking at him. He dropped his head again. And when he looked up third time, another one was about 5 feet from him stood up, and it was an adult female. And she you tell she's female. She was anatomically correct. And she looked at me and huffed. And I was like, "Yes, ma'am." And I dropped my head and I said, "Come on, Emery, we're going back because they're eating and we're not going to disturb them." And I have a YouTube video where me and him got back to the fire, and we were sitting in there, and I was talking with him more or less to calm him down. He does have autistic markers. And so that was one of the things. And I was like, "Well, that ain't no bird." He's like, "No, Daddy, that wasn't a bird." And I was like, "Was you scared?" He's like, "Daddy, they didn't make me feel like I was afraid." I said, "Yeah, there's a lot of times when I've been around them, I didn't get to thinking that I was even in danger until I got home, got in the shower, or sitting there soaking in the bathtub, thinking, man, I can't believe I got by with that." And it's just like one night I was out there. I was going through another divorce. Back then, their boy's mom, And I got me a new Lazy Boy recliner, so I took my old one and set it out there by the fire. And I figured, well, I'd sit out here and I'd watch boogers and I'd burn the fire and I'd be fine. On the weekends, the boys were at their mom's, so I sat in there and it got quiet. It was cool outside and the fire was warm. And I went to sleep. And about 2 in the morning, I woke up. I don't know why, unless it was just my subconscious mind heard everything get quiet. That's the only thing I can think of. And I raised up, and there was two females. One was an adolescent, about 6 foot tall, and one was an adult female. And they had already walked halfway between where my boundary line where I quit cutting the grass was and the fire. I have no idea what their intention was, but when I woke up and stood up, they screamed like two human females and run in different directions.
Man, they were scoping you out, buddy. They were scoping you out.
I pulled the back of that. Right, I pulled the back off that recliner and threw it in the fire, and it blazed up, and that's what scared them. Oh, that sponge got to burning, and I threw the rest of that in there, and that taught me don't never get comfortable around them. From then on, I put wood benches out, or I cut pieces of wood stumps, and so I sat out on them so I wouldn't get comfortable enough from then on to go to sleep. But
sound like one of them had the sweet eye on you, man. One of them had a little sweet eye on you.
I think that younger female, she would come up around the house, like she would go through our garbage. She would peck on the door and turn the doorknob because our garbage can was right there at the front door. And I would go to the front door and you'd hear toot, 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 about 3-4 steps, and she was gone in the woods straight. But
yeah, they're fast.
You could get out there. You've seen those big old green or gray garbage cans the city puts out. You put your garbage in, they pick it up with a truck and dump it. The only dogs around were like feists and ankle biters. But my garbage can, I was the only one that was strode out every time. Nobody's else in the neighborhoods was. And I had a Rottweiler and Black Lab mix. He looked like a giant pit bulldog, but he's solid black. His name was Shadow. And I took him in the woods with me when I went booger hunting by myself. But she would line the garbage up by metal and paper and plastic, and the color of the paper, the metal and plastic was all together, which was interesting to me. She was thinking. And you could see where she would clean we would put cans out there, and you could see where she had cleaned the cans out. Looked like somebody had sprayed them out. I don't know if she'd licked them or used her finger or what, but she'd clean them cans out and was tasting that stuff. And she would lick the paper and things. Well, the boys had a sponge ball that was orange. That's about the size of a volleyball that they played with. And she would take it every now and then, and it'd be gone a week and a half, and it'd come back in the same spot where it disappeared from. And one time when she took it, she brought it back. Well, the first time when she brought it back, it had a bite mark in it. It looked like half the size of a grapefruit, where she had bit it. And she thought it was something to eat. She bit it and realized it was sponge. She put the plug back in the ball and set the plug on the ground like we wouldn't notice that plug was bit out when we picked the ball up. But that shows forward thinking. That's a smart animal that does that. And she would walk around the house when the boys were gone. You could see where she put her nose up to the glass, looking in the glass for the boys. And my thinking on that was she was probably about their mental age, and she was the youngest in that family group. So she would gravitate towards the boys because they were about the same age. She got to the point where she would watch Nickelodeon on TV when the boys was, and you see her looking in the window, and when she realized she was looking at her, scream and run off. Well,
Oh, yeah.
she did that. She did that so much that when the boys would go to their moms for the weekend, I'd take the TV and put it on my kitchen table and open the door so she could look through. She could sit out in that grass there and watch TV, and she'd be there all weekend long. And when she's sitting in that grass watching TV, she's just like a human kid. You could have walked up and hit her in the head, and she wouldn't have known it till she felt it because she was enthralled with that TV. But
That's amazing. Yeah,
we
that's
seen
amazing how smart they are.
we seen her multiple times a week and sometimes daily, several times.
Wow. Did you give them names or anything, or
No,
just
I
knew they were
I
there?
respected them to be there. I would talk to them just like I talk to anybody else. If they was coming up around and I've been in that blackberry patch and there be 11 in there. That's the
Oh,
most I've
wow.
been around. And I thought about they were close and they act just like gorillas when they're like that. They
Mhm.
prune on each other. You do not get inside their circle. They will keep their back to you and they will move around to where look, you may be here, but you ain't welcome.
Yeah.
But when they come in the yard, they didn't act like that. When they come inside or where the grass was cut, it was like they understood that's my spot.
Hmm.
And I had went out there when they'd be hollering, and I'd be like, "Look, this is mine, that's y'all's," and I did that in the beginning, and we never had any problems with them. The juveniles would come up to the house, but the adults they never did. Oh, but they would eat those blackberries. Oh, they would they would eat the pecans that was on the tree. You could go out in the backyard. There's a big old pecan tree out there. It's probably 30 inches around at the base, and you could see something up in that tree, shaking that tree, and hear pecans falling like rain. And they'd be down there picking them up. You could hear them popping pecans, and they would put 3 or 4 pecans in their hand and squeeze, and their thumbs lower than ours, but they'd push forward with their thumb, and you could hear them pecans crack. And you could hear, and that pecan tree was every bit of 600 feet from our house. You still hear them pecans popping.
Wow. They've got
But
gorilla power. I mean, they got gorilla strength. I mean, they'll throw rocks
yeah,
at you, and I mean,
yeah,
it's like a pro baseball player throwing rocks at you. I mean,
right,
they can sling them. And, I mean, they're. I mean, gorillas are strong. So if they're
yeah.
as strong, if not stronger than gorillas, in my opinion.
I think what bone density and muscle density. I think they're every bit as strong as a gorilla, but them being twice their size, they're exponentially stronger than a gorilla.
Yeah, I
You not
think so too.
the only thing
Yep.
that keeps them out of your house is that's your property, that's your
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
They grip a car door off. It wouldn't matter, you know. I seen or had a friend of mine down in South Mississippi that was investigating a veterinarian. She had a bar door that was made out of oak, it's 4 inches thick, and those things ripped the whole door off the
Wow.
barn. And
Yeah.
and they were getting in there getting sweet feed. That was a issue where they were raiding her sweet feed for her animals. But she ended up having to put electricity to her barn door to keep them out.
Wow. Just a
But
regular
they,
little chimpanzee's stout. And a
oh yeah.
chimpanzee's got some strength.
Well,
It's
you look at a macaque monkey. He is strong.
yeah,
I mean,
crazy strong.
a little 30-pound monkey kill a man in a minute.
Yeah.
And I think, if you take a fire and you put a gorilla, an orangutan, a bonobo, a billy ape, a chimpanzee, and a human around that fire, that human's the odd monkey out.
Yeah.
Uh, we're not designed for living on land. Our
Mhm.
bodies are designed to be either semi-aquatic or aquatic. We don't have the strength they have, and they don't know that. They don't understand how weak we are. or how fragile we are.
I
All
mean,
right,
I got a cheeseburger design is what I got, you know.
right. But we've got fat deposits that help us float. Oh, that gorillas and stuff don't have.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm not.
that's
I
true,
don't
most of
even
them.
think Sasquatch has those. But our hooded nose is so water don't get in our nostrils.
Yeah.
Um, you can go on that aquatic ape hypothesis, but there's got to be something to it. And I think in my opinion, you seen that rise of man diagram in biology class where it shows Neanderthals and it goes up from a monkey to a modern man. I don't think modern man belongs at the top. I think a Sasquatch does. The reason why I say that is if you look at every developmental stage, they got bigger and they got smarter. Well, till you get up to Cro-Magnon and then you get up to Neanderthal, and suddenly they go from 6 foot down to 5.5 to 5'7". That don't make sense.
Oh
They
yeah.
got weaker. I've never seen anywhere where a Neanderthal made clothing. That'd be because they had hair. They're
Yeah.
land mammal. Us, oh, and that opens a whole new can of worms that people don't want to talk about.
Mhm.
But every culture we've got talks about men more. They weren't evolved; they were developed. And God made man. God created man in His own image. God took the earth and He made man. That's in every indigenous history, every modern human uh, uh, origin story says we were created. Well, that sounds like genetic manipulation to me. That's a different podcast, I guess. But
Oh,
uh,
oh yeah. I mean, there's a lot of talks about how man branched off from monkey, and there's possibly
mhm,
another branch. You know what I'm saying, which led in the direction of the Sasquatch, and there's literally three branches there, and all three branches still exist with the Bigfoot creature. You know what I'm saying, being in play
right,
with their living in
right,
society. There's those theories of different. You know what I'm saying, branches off.
yeah,
Then you got the one you speak of. It's got Homo habilis, the Ecrodus, the
yeah,
Neanderthal, the Cro-Magnon, you know what I'm saying, and the
right,
Homo sapiens does. You've got that. That's what we were taught in school, you know what I'm saying, through evolution.
right.
But I think there was a different branch. I really do. I think there's certain branches that we're not recognizing.
I think the evolutionary tree wasn't a tree; it was a bush. It
Yeah,
it
exactly.
there wasn't any straight up line saying this goes here, that goes there, that goes there. I think they were all interbreeding, and
Yes.
that's in even modern human psychology. Breeding is a big motivation.
Yes. I'm from a little town in Radcliffe, Kentucky. You ever heard of Radcliffe, Kentucky, next to Elizabethtown? Yeah, I think they're a different breed
Yeah.
of people down there in Radcliffe. I call them Giganto Radcliffeans, is what I call them.
That,
Yeah, they're a totally different breed down there, man.
well, they may be some of those three-toed Kentuckians down there.
Three-toed Kentuckians. That's what.
I've never,
But
I've never been up through there. Oh,
yeah, if you ever visit Kentucky, that kind of it does like you says. It kind of branches off like a bush down there.
right. Oh, the only place I've been intentionally in Kentucky is a little old town called Foulmouth, Kentucky. I don't know if you ever heard of that,
Yeah, I know
but
exactly where it's at.
we repoed a truck from a guy in the middle of nowhere in Foulmouth, Kentucky, and that was a suitably named town because I think even the little kids swore down
Yeah. Yeah, the 9-year-old's got a pack of Marlboros in his shirt.
there. Right.
Oh, yeah, Kentucky's it's its own country almost.
Yeah.
It's its own area in the country. Let's put it like that. But you get,
Right.
closer to the Appalachians, you talk about the Cherokee and stuff. Cherokees
Yeah.
had their run in with Bigfoot creatures. And,
Oh yeah.
this is where you get the red hairy man from Kentucky, the midnight whistler. And,
Right.
they got all kinds of names for them down that way. But, there's so many different names, that different cultures. So, I mean,
Hmm.
and all these people for hundreds of years have seen these creatures. They've got to be they got to be out there. They got to be real. I mean, we've
Right.
had incidents with, I've had rocks thrown at me before. I mean, I've never
Right.
seen one personally, but man, I tell you what, I had a rock a couple weeks ago hit I was out there at a cemetery in Ghost. Now there's 600 in southern Indiana where I was at.
Hmm.
There's 600 caves in that area. Marengo
Right.
Cave, Diamond Cave Caverns, and there's just a
Hmm.
ton of these caves. And they claim that the DNR up here said that back in 1974 actually saw a juvenile drinking water from a little Blue River, a little creek area from like called Blue River access
Okay.
area, and he took
Hmm.
off running. But they don't really want to talk about it. It's like they're
Right.
protecting them. But I had a rock throw and hit my ghost hunting bag, and it moved my ghost hunting bag, and I picked it up. I got a thermal camera, and I picked up this. I mean, it was a bigger creature, and you could see
Hmm.
its arms swinging. And when it threw
Right.
another rock, man, it zinged past me, and I just left. I had to get out of
Uh,
there. You know?
I've seen them throw rocks. Everyone I've seen throw rocks hold their palm down, and when they swing up. Oh,
Yeah.
I was I was describing that for years to one of my friends up in Germantown, Tennessee, and he found that at Provo, Utah, Bigfoot video where that Bigfoot's throwing rocks in I think it's Provo Canyon if I remember right, and he's like, Joe, I found a video of what they say is a Sasquatch throwing rocks, and that's exactly the way they would do. Uh, I've had them throw rocks at me. I've had them throw hickory nuts at me. That was in the earlier days. Walnuts, boy, they can hum a walnut even in that green outer cover.
Mhm.
Um, I learned then when they get to the point that they're throwing stuff at you, they've already asked you nicely to leave, and you were too dumb to know it, and they're
Yeah.
just basically running you out. Um,
Yeah.
you'll see all these people that claim to be experts, but their story is I went in the woods and that thing chased me back to my truck, and
Mhm.
I got out there. They ain't experts; they're harassing wildlife
Yeah.
because they haven't taken the time to even understand the thinking of them. But I in the last 10 years, I've not had nothing thrown at me because I've learned the signs to when they want you gone. They'll let you know nicely. If they've got to run you out there, that's just like if somebody come and sat in your yard and you
Mhm.
said, "Hey, you mind moving on?" And they don't say nothing. They no. Hey, I asked you to move on. Look, go. Well, eventually you're going to expel them one way or another, and that's
Mhm.
what all the chasing and stuff is. In my experiences, I have been bluff charged, but that was my own ignorance that did it. Uh, my dog. Oh, I was talking about earlier back in 2000. I think it was 15. Might have been 2014. Anyway, he bowled up on a juvenile's. What I think happened in one of the preserves, and they run me out of there. He bushwhacked straight to the truck after he realized what it was, and but they was in front of me, behind me. It was like I was running through a Cherokee gauntlet. I mean, slapping trees and throwing limbs, and they could. And the whole time, it had took me 30 minutes to get to that point, walking down the trails. But it took me about, I guess, 15 minutes at the most to get back to my truck. But they stopped. They stopped right at the tree line, and the truck was probably 40 yards from the tree line. After I got out of the tree line, they was good. They was done with me. But they had me. If they had wanted me, I could have been a missing 411, and nobody would have believed what got me. But I tried to think like they would think, and say, well, if they're doing this, why would I do that? And I talked to them. I've had them come up to my camp and throw stuff at the camp, and then I get to talking to them. And they sit down there and start humming, and that stuff I don't understand that. But the rock throwing and stuff quit. And when I sit there and when they understand that they're there and you're not showing any fear, that changes the ball game. Either they're going to amp it up on you and they're going to get rid of you, or they're going to be like any other bully and they're going to calm down and realize, oh, this ain't working. We got to try something else.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel the population level is growing with them down there? I mean,
I think so. I think they're thriving. And you'll have people say, oh, there may not be more than 200-300 in the whole continent. I think that's BS all the way
I think there
around.
are a lot more.
I've seen 11 at one time in Lauderdale County, Alabama. If there's just 100, they was having some kind of convention, but they living together their best life now.
Yeah, I bet there's probably, my guesstimate, and this is just a guesstimate, and I'm no pro at this. I'd say there's more around 20-25,000. And I mean, I think there are groups that they're just hidden, and they're damn good hiders. I think there's a lot more in the South and wooded areas, like going up toward Oregon, Washington State area, and there's just a lot of national park areas, especially up that way, that is you just people can't get on. You know what I'm saying? And buy the land owned by the government, and I think that's where a lot of them are.
I think the government realized that they can't control them like they could control the indigenous population. They had to give them their space. I mean, you find these nature preserves that may be like in the middle of the town or middle of the county, and then there may not be another nature preserve, but that's forever wildland. Mm-hmm. And you like Natchez Trace, they all up and down Natchez Trace and this area. I sat and watched a family group kill 3 deer down there one night, and it looked like something off of Wild America. But they're all over the place. But what you have to sit there and ask yourself is, if they're that big and they're all over the place, what else is out there that we don't know about?
Yeah. You know what they say? There's like 5 or 6 new species found every day, mostly fish. But I mean, we're still finding a lot of things out there. But I mean, eventually with the population level rising, especially in places like Oregon, Northern California, Washington State, I'd say there was probably 5,000 or 6,000 just in that area. You know what I'm saying? Up and around the mountains and stuff like that. I mean, with the population growing, with the camera systems we got, the trail cameras, the drones, I mean, eventually thermal cameras, infrared, somebody's going to start getting some really good evidence that they're out there.
I think you would have to go subterranean to get into a lot of the bigger communities of them. I really think that they utilize cave systems. I used to be a spelunker years ago. Before my knees went out on me. But there had been times when I'd see stuff that I thought, there's no way that a person has got in here. But there's human debris, tore up pieces of fabric that don't make sense, crushed cans, stuff that water just wouldn't wash in because it would be in higher elevations. And at that time, I didn't believe in Sasquatch, but if I had, I'd have probably took time to look around. Because those places all smelled pretty rank, just like body odor, almost like a barnyard. And that stuff that you associate with Sasquatch a lot of times is a bad body odor. But it wouldn't surprise me if there was 250,000 of them on the whole continent, counting Alaska and Canada. All the way down to Central America. It wouldn't surprise me a bit.
Even in China, there's been spottings of China over in Manchuria, all the way down into Vietnam. I mean, even during the Vietnam War, our soldiers even saw, these ape creatures
in Vietnam.
Yes, the rock apes. That's what I'm saying. There is
Yeah.
so much out there that we just don't know.
Yeah. People talk about those rock apes being small. I talked with a guy who was a forward scout for the army in Vietnam, and he was talking about rock apes. And the government actually went in on a assignment that he had, and he sniped six of them.
Wow.
Because they were going through this valley, and they were hunting the Viet Cong, and these rock apes were throwing boulders that were 60 and 80 pounds off the top of the walls of the canyon at them. And because of this travel way was so important to what they were doing there, they had decided that they had to get rid of those rock apes so they could keep the canyon, or and they took control of that. He said, but the smallest one was over 7 foot tall. The ones that they shot.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's like it's what is it called? Is it the Sundong Cave over in Vietnam? I believe I said that right. Sundong Cave, supposed to be the biggest cave in the world, actually bigger than actually Mammoth Cave in Kentucky now. And they don't know what's in that area. They
Oh,
have no
I
clue
think
what's in that area.
that's the one that got the whole echo system down inside there.
Yes.
It's open.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
I
said
know
they
what
can
you're
fit
talking about.
the city of
Yeah,
LA can actually fit inside of it. I'm like, what the
right,
heck? What's in that? What's in that? I mean, there's so much to be discovered in the world. We're just, man, we're just I mean, just now got the technology with camera, like I say, with cameras and infrared and thermal. Just, I mean, the regular citizen Joe 25, 30 years ago did not have access to thermal cameras and access
right,
to IR cameras like we do now. I use them for a ghost hunting all the time. I'll set my thermal
really,
cameras up. But 20, 25 years ago, we didn't have that. We was lucky to get Sony IR systems. I mean, just
right,
with handy cams. But now,
right.
man, on TikTok shop offers and things for 40, 50, $60. Of course, thermals come way down too. I mean, you
Yeah,
pick up thermal camera for a couple $100. I mean, you can get
right,
something like I've got, which is more high definition, about $600 to $800. But still, we have access to those things now.
right.
That's the stuff that we're going to need, not only for paranormal research and ghost hunting and stuff like that. We actually need it for cryptozoology, Bigfoot. I mean,
Yeah,
there's I mean, there's stuff out there like the Mothman and Jersey Devil. People are hunting for these
yeah,
things, even
right.
alien. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever used any IR systems for looking up into outer space at night, but man, you can really get some cool views up there. I mean, for UFOs and stuff like that for IR
Yeah,
systems. I mean, there's technology finally being handed to citizens now that we can actually do what me and you
yeah,
are doing. We can go out there and
right,
it's not super costly to do, and we can go out there
right.
and do our thing, man, and
Yeah.
hopefully bring evidence to the table.
Well, the thing is, anybody that we would want to convince that they're real, they already know they're real. The same
Yeah.
people that said Bigfoot was fake used to say UFOs were fake. Now they're saying UFOs are real, and we know the track record with the government. They're not going to tell us the truth. So
Yeah.
just the fact that we don't know what's in the bottom of the ocean. We were trying to find out what was in the bottom of the ocean before we decided to go to space. They
Yeah.
found something down there that made us decide we didn't want nothing on the bottom of the ocean. We wanted to go find out space, and that would lead you to wonder just what that was.
Yeah.
And who's to say that those UFOs they're indigenous to Earth? They're developed different from us. They're underwater. If they fly
Yeah.
through air, they can fly through water. I mean,
I mean,
and the designs of it is made for that.
there's just a lot of mystery out there, left out. I mean, that's one of the biggest mysteries that I've got is my ex-wife making baseball biscuits. How the hell does she make a biscuit that is like a baseball? I mean, what ingredients goes into something like that? I mean, there's just mysteries everywhere in life, man. We
Yeah,
don't.
this world is completely different than what they taught us it was, and we miss a lot of things because we don't know to look for them.
That's
Uh,
it.
there's been a lot of times that I've been driving through the woods on a side by side, and I see something out of the corner of my eye, and my mind says, "I'll leave that alone. You didn't see that," and I will purposely turn around and go look
Yeah.
because that's how I found a lot of Sasquatch. They'd be standing out in the middle of the field, absolutely still, and you go by, and they're so big you might think they're a fir tree. Oh, I worked as a patrol officer at a rail car plant in Colbert County, Alabama. Oh, and it was during the time of the construction. There was no electricity out there. When I would go to the guard house at the front every night, there was a Sasquatch that would set 40 yards for me and watch me, and I'd sit and watch him sometimes all night long because there's no way in the world I was going to jump on that side by side and drive around 1,700 acres with him sitting there watching me.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah. Are they?
but
Do you think that they're just very unpredictable? I mean, are they just? I
I
mean,
think I think they have a different mindset than we do. Their thinking is completely alien to us, and they
yeah.
may decide to do something that's completely okay with them that we're not okay with. Uh, and that's, for example, like if me and you was in a hunting camp together, and I've got a my 308, and I set it down next to my seat, and I get up and go to the bathroom. That's my 308, and you're gonna leave it alone because
Hmm.
that's mine. That's my property. All
Hmm.
right. Oh, if a booger sees me set that a 308 down and me go use the bathroom, I don't want it no more. Or in my experience, way
Hmm.
they think, so he can go do what he wants to with it, and they'll come up and they'll do what they want to with it.
Yeah.
Just like with livestock and everything else. If you've got chickens out in the yard and they're running loose, and he wants a chicken, well, you ain't using it. Oh, they don't have a concept of theft the way Europeans do, and it,
Yeah.
and it, it's sort of like the idea of theft that the Native Americans have. You know, if you can go take something, that's yours. That's where the raids came from. Oh, they would get resources and whatever, wives or whatever. They just go 50, 60 miles over yonder to another tribe and raid them. If they could get it, they get it, and they take their spoils
Yeah.
back with them. And the Sasquatch think a lot like that.
Yeah.
And they
What what county are you from? What state was it?
I'm in Lauderdale County, Alabama.
Alabama. I'm gonna have to put my ex-wife in a car, going down there and drop her off, and they can have her. How's that? I don't want her no more.
Man,
They can have her, and just kind of she can make baseball biscuits for them.
I'll
maybe they
probably
maybe they can got the jawline and the teeth, they can
right,
eat them.
right.
I appreciate you guys. We're running out of time though.
All right.
Uh,
I
That was a good, pretty
appreciate
good
you,
show.
Stan. I appreciate you, Joe. Appreciate everybody
well,
listening to Nighthawk Radio. Everybody have a good night and God bless.